Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back to another Warframe video where today we are going to be taking an in-depth look at the focus trees in Warframe. Now, this is one of the things in Warframe which very recently, and I say very recently, it's a few months now, has received a major update. And a lot of returning players to the game and new players, they really don't want to bother with this kind of stuff. So I thought it would be beneficial to just create a small video here. I don't know how small it's going to be actually, but I'm going to create a video anyway and explain each of these focus trees individually, where they can be used, and you know which ones I think are better than others in my opinion, and all that good stuff. So I think the way we're going to structure this video, we're going to talk about one tree at a time. Once we've talked through the tree, we'll explain it and we'll go through it in a mission and show where it can be used actually practically. And then we'll just move on to the next one and I'll chapter the video so you guys can skip to whichever tree you're interested in. But you know, for the full overview and knowing where to use this kind of stuff, best to probably just watch the whole thing through. So I'm going to start with Madurai and then I'm going to work my way around and then we'll do a bit of a conclusion at the end. So Madurai is probably one of my go-tos. It's possibly my favorite. It's definitely a lot of people's favorite at the moment. It is the damage focus tree. You can pretty much, you know, call it that because all of the abilities in here essentially revolve around dealing more damage. So what we're going to do, we're going to focus on the two waybound nodes first, and then we'll work our way through the rest of the tree. So in Madurai, your two waybound nodes, and by waybound I mean that once these are fully unlocked, as you can see, we have this special little star at the end here, which requires you to have a brilliant Eidolon shard to unlock. Once these are unlocked, your operator will have increased energy for amps and void beam, and that'll increase by 40%. And then you'll also have increased amp regeneration by 60%. So when you're doing things like Eidolon hunts, this is really important because obviously you get more shots from your amp, and if you're using something like the Proper scaffold on your amp, then this is very important because it allows you to fire off 3 shots rather than 2. And obviously it comes back faster, so you don't have to wait as long in order to fire more shots from your amp. So 2 very important nodes if you're doing Eidolon hunting. However, you don't actually need to unbind these, as it were. As you can see, you get the waybound nodes if you are doing Eidolon hunts because you're going to be running Madurai anyway. Which means that, you know, these are going to be active no matter what. But, you know, if you're using another tree, then you might want to get these unbound. So those are the waybound nodes on Madurai. Phoenix Talons is the big one, really, in the center here. The one you're going to go for first. Basically gives a flat 30% damage to both Operator and Warframe on weapons. So definitely an important one to max. That's basically what it does. Power Transfer over here. 100% amp critical damage for 20 seconds on switching to Operator, and 50% casting speed on switching to Warframe. So whilst this is very important for Eidolon hunts, and you know any other scenario where you're going to be using your Operator actually, it is also very good for casting speed on your Warframe. It can even replace, you know, casting speed mods, so you can use an extra slot if you so choose. So that's a good one. Contamination Wave over on the right here is actually an Operator ability. So it's the second ability on your Operator, which for me is bound to my 2 key on my keyboard. And this basically emits a Void Wave that lasts for 2 seconds. So it flies forward for 2 seconds, drenches any enemies within its path with Void Contamination, and for 20 seconds, those enemies will take an additional 50% damage. So if, for example, we're fighting Eidolons, and an Eidolon gets hit by this ability, then it will take 1.5 times more damage. Again, very, very useful and very needed for something like Eidolon hunting. Distilled Contamination isn't that important. When we kill an enemy, it will spread the effect of Contamination Wave, so that extra 50% damage, and it'll also add an additional 50% damage. Now, if you're doing Eidolon hunts, this is not important because we're not actually killing the Eidolon, so that actually doesn't benefit us all that much. But at the same time, if you're in a mission perhaps where you know, you have to use your Operator for whatever reason, and this also pairs well with, and we'll come to this later on in Unairu, the Last Gasp ability. So revive your Warframe by transferring to Operator and killing 3 enemies before 15 seconds elapses. This can also be very helpful for this, because obviously, if you hit them with Contamination Wave, and then they die, any further enemies you shoot at are going to have that additional 50% damage. So they pair up quite well. We've then also got a Chain Sling here, which basically just increases the efficiency of doing multiple Void Slings with our Operator. So again, bit of quality there, quality of life. Sling strength, that basically means that we can do consecutive slings and grant our Warframe 40% extra ability strength. Again, really, really useful for improving your Warframe's damage output, especially if you have one which has something that buffs weapons. So, for example, Eclipse on Mirage or Rhino's Roar. Anything like that is going to be hugely benefited by this. And you don't even have to sling far. You can sling straight into the ground, which will demonstrate. So again, a very good ability. Void Strike. First ability consumes all energy to increase damage for 8 seconds. Deal 10% additional damage for every percentage of energy consumed. So what that's essentially saying is that you can get a maximum of 10 times damage on your amp if you have full operator energy pool when you activate this ability. So 10% per percent of operator energy, you get, 1,000% if you've got 100% operator energy. So huge damage there. Obviously, it's got a 40-second cooldown, so we need to use it sparingly. But again, a very, very important tool for Eidolon hunting, so definitely one to max out. Void Fuel, again, 40% weapon efficiency for Operator and Warframe, while Void Strike is active. Not that important, to be honest, because Void Strike's only going to be active every so often, and you're going to benefit more from Inner Gaze and Eternal Gaze being maxed than you are from Void Fuel being maxed. So bear that in mind. And to be honest, the damage you get from your amp on this is so insane that it's just not even worth doing it anyway. So what we're going to do, I'm going to hop in, we'll show an Eidolon hunt where these abilities are being used exactly during the hunt, and then we will move on to the next focus tree in the pool. Okay guys, so to demonstrate Madurai, I thought we'd just come into the plains and kind of just casually work our way around this terror list right here. We'll probably have to break through a few limbs to fully demonstrate this, so I've brought along a lure. And yeah, first of all, let's just hop out, and we'll just kind of attack with our operator normally against this Eidolon. So as you can see there, 288, 2490, but you can see in the top right there's a countdown occurring. That's our plus 100% crit damage from swapping into our operator. So actually, when you see a crit there, it's twice as much as it usually would be. So let's just wait a second. So there we go. It's now run out. And there you go. 1,272 now from our crits. So again, a very important ability. So let's try now using our second ability. Now what you'll see when I use this is that in the top right we'll have a bit of a countdown because that's procced our arcane, so I must apologise for that. But that's just going to provide us with an extra 60% amp damage, so let's go ahead and do that. You can see their Eternal Eradicate. We'll let that run out, and then we'll see the damage difference. 406, 405, 1881. So as you can see, before we were on 1,272. Now we're up at 1,880. So we've gained an extra 50%. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate killing an enemy with it and then it transferring because, that's quite self-explanatory really. He'll just take an extra 50% damage. So rather than that being 1,800, it'll be up at like 2,500. So yeah. That's that, and then if we take a look at Void Strike now, so that's our first ability here. Again, I think, I can't wait for Eternal Eradicate to run out, but if we do this, you can see there, it's just an instant shield takedown once we've used R1. It's basically a guaranteed shield takedown whenever you use Void Strike. So, yeah, that's really important to note. So let's just go ahead now. We'll clear this off. I haven't got any buffs on, so that's why it's taking a while. But when you combine that all together, you basically get just a lot of damage. So let's just demonstrate that. So if we use our second ability here, and then throw out a few propers, that's how you can instantly take down an Eidolon shield, making use of Madurai. So yeah, that's kind of the demonstration for Madurai. And it works on every enemy as well, remember, so unfortunately, my amp does quite a lot of damage, but yeah, it's just going to one-shot everything anyway. If we were on Steel Path, this would be alright, or we went into the Simulacrum, but I don't really have time to do any of that, so yeah. Hopefully this kind of demonstrates... Oh, here we go, actually. This... Oh, no, never mind. Yeah, hopefully it demonstrates Madurai well enough. and the different abilities is the main thing. So the second one, if you hit a target, it'll obviously provide an additional 50% amp damage. The first one just provides you with an insane amount of damage. We're out of range here. There we go. So yeah, let's move on to the next focus tree. Okay guys, so now we're going to move on to Unairu. Unairu is one of my go-to skill trees again. And in fact, it's one of the ones that I maxed out earliest on. This is a great skill tree for players who are just starting, as it provides you with some utility which you don't usually get until much later on in the game. So if you can max this out quite early on, you will get huge return on it. So let's just run through quickly. I'm going to go from the bottom this time. We're going to look at Stone Skin, which again just increases armor on your Warframe unoperated by 200. It's another just, you know, flat buff, similar to Madurai's damage increase. This is just going to increase endurance. So again, another really nice just passive ability. Poise, this is a really important ability for early players. Currently in Warframe, there is an AoE meta, and by that I mean weapons which deal large explosions to destroy enemies are kind of the go-to for clearing out exterminate missions, defense missions, you name it. You know, Kuva Ogress, Kuva Brahma, anything like that, they're the go-to weapons right now, and they provide huge area of effect damage, which wipes out enemies quite quickly. Even after the nerf, they are still very, very effective. But unfortunately, they cause a lot of stagger and occasional knockdown. So this ability, Poise, basically makes us immune to that. Now, the only other way you can make yourself 100% immune to this is either by stacking a load of knockdown prevention mods or putting on Primed Sure-Footed. And Primed Sure-Footed, you're not going to get until your day 400 login. So, you know, up until that point, this is what you need to be getting if you want to use AoE weapons. It is very, very useful, and again, we'll do a mission after this and show it in action. There's 2 more abilities in here. Actually, there's 3 more abilities in here, which can be extremely useful. The first one is Caustic Strike. This is a permanent armor strip. So any enemies that are super high level, perhaps if you've got a really, you know, really annoying Eximus unit that's bothering you, or even a boss that's bothering you, this will permanently strip armor. So when I'm emphasizing permanent because I mean even things like Demolists on what's it called, disruption missions, they will completely lose their armor permanently from this ability, which means that even when they do their sort of nullifier burst, they will not regain armor after this ability has been used on them. So it is a very useful ability for that also. Now, this kind of pairs in with Unairu Wisp, which spawns a Wisp that doubles operator damage for 20 seconds. Excuse me. And this is really good for Eidolon hunts as well if you're running in a 2-man squad. One player should be running Unairu Wisp, generally the DPS, and the other player should be running Madurai, as this basically just doubles the VS, or Void Striker's damage. So, yeah. Again, very useful tool for Eidolon hunting. I'm not actually going to show a clip of this in this video, but there are plenty of videos out there for 2-man Eidolon hunts. We will do a guide on it at some point, but for now, I'm just going to leave that one be. But, you know, for a 2-man Eidolon hunt, it's very important. Magnetic Flare is the other one. This is very, very good at hunting Sisters of Parvos, and I do plan to get a video up on that, similar to the Kuva Lich one I did on how to hunt Sisters. So this ability is, yeah, very effective at just insta-stripping shields. So Hounds, in particular, have a very, very large shield as opposed to their health bar, and this completely gets rid of it in an instant. So, you know, especially if you're earlier on in the game, and perhaps you don't have the damage or the mods to take down shields very quickly, this is a really, really useful tool. And it does kind of pair in with Magnetic Boost if you want to increase the radius of things that are losing their shield, but again, it's not all that important. Now, the only other thing that I want to talk about in this skill tree is the 2 Waybound nodes up here. Reinforced Return down here and these things, they're just kind of pointless in my mind, at least. There's no real good use for them. They're kind of just quirky. So we're going to leave them be. If you want to take a look at them, obviously go and have a look in the Unairu skill tree and you can understand fairly easily what they do. So we're going to just move straight onto Last Gasp and Vengeance here. So essentially what happens is when you die, rather than your, if you're in solo, for example, rather than you going instantly into the death screen and then having to revive, it will put you into your operator. And if you're able to get 3 enemy kills during this time, during the 15 seconds, you will revive your Warframe. Now, this is actually not quite right in the description. While it says killing 3 enemies, you can also get up by just killing 1 Eximus unit. So bear that in mind if you're in a normal mission and you want to get back up. Maybe try and focus a weaker Eximus unit because you only need to kill 1 of them in order to get back up. So bear that in mind. Vengeance, again, pairs with Last Gasp. It just increases your operator's damage whilst you're in Last Gasp, which is very useful if you want to help get yourself back up. So that's Unairu, and let's take a look at a mission or 2 now just to show this in action and where it can be used. Okay guys, so right now we're actually running a mission for a Kuvalich, so it's an exterminate mission. The enemies are fairly high level, but they could be higher. But what I've done here, you can see in the top right hand corner, if I go in and out of operator, you see that 40-second countdown kind of within the bubbles. That's indicating how long we have to have left on our buffs. So you'll notice as I was running around there with my Kuva Ogress, which I've now just run out of ammo on, rather annoyingly, that I wasn't falling over, and I don't have Prime Surefooted on this build, so yeah, that was just that 40 seconds coming into effect. Let's get some more back. Here we go. So as you can see, still 7 seconds left. We're not going to fall over. I'll let that run out actually, and then you'll see what happens when we do run out of that timer. So if I shoot at the ground now without it, you can see we get knocked back, and we have to wait ages to get back into the fight. So it's really useful if you're early on in the game, you don't have access to Prime Surefooted, and you want to use AoE weapons in this manner. Yeah, really good for that. Let's try and demonstrate the armor strip in this mission as well. Obviously, you can use it against higher priority targets. But since we're kind of restricted here in the enemies we have, we'll have to make do. So let's do it on a Thrall, actually. So you'll see here, if I go into Operator and use my second ability, whoop, and fly off the map, he'll probably jump down. Yeah, there we go. So they've all got full armor, and now they don't. So they'll actually take a stupid amount of damage now, which is all well and good. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate the shield ability, so that will be your first, this one, because none of these enemies have shields, and I want to keep this video at least, under an hour. So, yeah, we'll keep it like this, but obviously, if you do want to strip shields, same way I just stripped armor here, then all you need to do is get close to the enemy and then use that first ability, and it will remove all of their shields. So again, very, very useful. But let's move on now and go to the next focus tree. Okay guys, so now we're going to look at Vazarin. So Vazarin is what I like to think of as the supporting skill tree. Where we had damage on Madurai, utility on Unairu, Vazarin is very much based around healing and essentially just helping your teammates out. So let's start with the 2 waybound nodes here. We've got Rejuvenating Tides and Enduring Tides. So Rejuvenating Tides is basically health regen for your operator. Again, it's really only good for if you're running operator on solo on Madurai, so to get this unbound is actually quite important. Enduring Tides increases operator health and armor by 200%. Now that's a really big boost, and I would recommend focusing getting this unbound quite early on, especially if you're getting into Eidolon hunts. This is a really important one, so do bear that in mind. Mending Soul, one of the passives on Vazarin. Again, a supportive node here. It's the first 4 revives are instantaneous. It's self-explanatory. I'm not going to go into it. Void regen. Void mode starts healing at plus 10 health per second, increasing by 10 per second up to a maximum of 50. And then that pairs in with squad regen. So once void regen reaches its maximum, it is applied to squad members within an affinity range for 60 seconds. So again, a very, very support-focused pair of nodes here. Void Snare. This is your second ability, which you can launch. It spins up a vortex trap, which is kind of similar to Vauban's, but Vauban's was, but not as effective in any way, shape, or form. And to be honest, you're not really gonna help. So, you know, it's an interesting ability, but there's no kind of scenario where this would actually be useful, in my opinion, and you can definitely replace this with just using another frame. It's not a big deal. Protective Sling. Allies touched by Void Sling are granted immunity from damage for 5 seconds and healed 60% over 5 seconds. Now, this is actually a very good node. Granting immunity is always good as a support frame. So, you know, definitely unlock this if you do plan on playing that kind of role in your squad. But again, not strictly necessary, and if you're running solo, it's not going to benefit you in any way, shape, or form, unless you are doing something that involves a stationary AI target, not a human player, but, you know, an NPC in the game that you can defend using this ability, and there aren't many of those left around, actually. This used to be a really effective tool for farming Kuva on Kuva Survival, because it would make the Kuva Siphon, not the Kuva Siphon, sorry, the life support modules, which you can get Kuva from, invulnerable while you're defending them. Unfortunately, that's changed now, probably for good reason, but, you know, it used to be used for things like that. And then we've got two things down here, Guardian Shell and Guardian Break. Again, these are kind of a bit so, use your first ability to manifest a barrier on the operator and allies in affinity range. It is invulnerable for 4 seconds when first created, and damage inflicted while it's invulnerable will be added to its base health of 500. So, again, largely based around support. So, not a whole lot of uses in this one for solo, unfortunately, but in my opinion, really, the only reason you probably would run this is for Mending Soul. The 2 Waybound nodes are quite good, and also Protective Sling. Those are kind of the only reasons that I would even consider running this. Mending Unity is alright if you want to leech a bit of XP, but again, if you're leeching XP, then I don't respect you. So bear that in mind. I've spoken about this in my Warframe Unefficiently playthrough, by the way, leeching XP. If you're doing something like ESO or just normal Sanctuary Onslaught, don't just stand still and expect your teammates to do stuff. Go ahead and start meleeing units down. You're better off actually running Naramon for that kind of thing, and we'll come to that in a second. And just trying to help your team out by just melee killing as much stuff as you can. If you want to get XP, do it that way. And yeah, like I said, we'll explain that when we get to Naramon. But for now, let's just show a quick demonstration of this skill tree in action, and then we'll move on to the next one. Alright guys, so for Vazarin I thought I'd just jump into the plains here to demonstrate this, as it's quite easy to find groups of enemies, although there are annoying Eidolons walking around. So I've already activated Guardian Shell, you can see in the top right there. We've got ourselves 500 on Guardian Shell. And we've still got 4 Mending Soul charges, so that's our instant revives you can see in the top right there. Now, the other ability, obviously, that we can use is our second, which is what casts our kind of vortex. Now, this is a really bad vortex, not going to lie. Its range is very minimal. It can't intersect, or not intersect, sorry. It can't pull through solid surfaces, so, you know, compared to Vauban's, for example, it's really not great. But we can demonstrate the invulnerability here on our Praetor site, which I'm currently ranking up. So in the top right-hand corner, you can see under my health bar, the Pharaoh Praetor site's health bar, which currently is at 2,259 HP. Now, if I dash through him, he should turn grey, and that means that he is then invulnerable to damage. And I should be as well, I believe. I can't quite remember. It'll also happen if you dash through your Warframe. So, first of all, let's just go and do it on the Praetor site. And as you can see there, he is now invulnerable, and he should be coming out of invulnerability about now. Yep, there we go. So if we go into our Warframe now, you can see that in the top right, our health is also vulnerable, but if we dash through with our operator, you can see we are now invulnerable for about 5 seconds. So it's a nice bit of invulnerability, but it's kind of annoying, you know, it's only 5 seconds. But if you did want to just survive for a while, for whatever reason, then this is a method of doing it. Let's go ahead and demonstrate the vortex, just to show you the kind of range and how you can expect it to work. So we'll come over here and we'll just cast it on this guy. So you can see it pulled this guy in, but this heavy gunner is not getting pulled in, and she is right next to it. So, you know, the range isn't great. We could probably do it there and get all 3 of them. And it's a bit awkward, you know, going into your operator to do that, especially, you know, when you've got enemies that are spread out. It doesn't really have a whole lot of use, but yeah, it is what it is. And if you're in a squad, Vazarin can be helpful. You know, it can help you survive and all that good stuff. So do bear that in mind. You know, it's not a completely useless skill tree, but particularly if you're playing on solo, it doesn't really help all that much. So let's move on to the next focus tree. Okay guys, so Zenurik is the next tree we're going to focus on, and this is one that a lot of players just starting out tend to actually go down first, mainly for Wellspring. Now this is an ability that creates a little pool around you and allows you to regenerate energy slowly, and it's very good for using clearance frames such as, you know, Vault, Mirage, anything that's going to just deal huge AoE damage from the frame. This is a really good ability for that, because obviously you don't have to go around and collect all of the energy orbs. You can just wait inside your Wellspring and let your energy come back up over time. So that's kind of what people go for. This actually, in my opinion, becomes irrelevant as soon as you get something like Arcane Energize, which obviously you'll get a bit later down the line. But again, for early players, this is a good ability to be able to get. So generally speaking, I would probably still advise players who are getting into the focus tree to go down this route first, especially if you are starting out early on, because this ability will help you to grow your skill tree a bit more. So just bear that in mind. That also then feeds into Hardened Wellspring, where if you recast Wellspring inside your own Wellspring, it will just give it a boost and also grant an additional 20% ability strength to people inside, including yourself, which again, really good for clearance frames because it gives you that additional 20% ability strength. Not as much as if you did the consecutive sling on Madurai, but it still gives you a decent boost and also provides energy over time. So bear that in mind. There's a few other abilities in here which are okay. The Waybound nodes in Zenurik are also very important, increasing operator energy by 90%. And increasing operator energy regeneration by 90%. Very, very important for Eidolon hunting, so do go ahead and get those. Energy Pulse, energy pickups grant 50% additional energy over 5 seconds, so, you know, more energy from energy orbs, also very good. These two up here can actually be very useful for disruption missions. It slows down the enemy and then also provides an additional 100% damage on precision headshot for those affected by the slowdown. The two down the bottom here I think are completely useless, to be honest. So slinging through enemies has a 50% chance to disarm them. I would like to see this have a 100% chance. Only then would I think it's even viable, because again, you could just replace this with a frame such as Mag or Loki. You know, anything like that would just basically mimic this, so it's kind of pointless. And No Quarter, killing a disarmed enemy increases operator energy regen rate by 10% for 10 seconds. Again, kind of pointless once you've unlocked Void Siphon and Void Flow. You're just not going to use it. So, yeah. That's Zenurik. Let's go ahead and demonstrate this in a mission, and then we'll move on to the next one. Okay, guys, so looking at Zenurik now, I just thought I'd go ahead and, before we actually jump in, I'm on a solo Elite Sanctuary Onslaught here. And before we jump in, I just want to show the abilities right here. So our Wellspring, which is the one that, you know, you should be using as a player towards the beginning of the game, as if using a clearance frame, such as the Vault I've got on here, which is built for his 4th ability. It can go ahead and provide you with energy, as you will see in the top right-hand corner. So that little 5 there is indicating 5 energy per second. And when our Wellspring disappears, you will see a timer counting down from 30. And a little 5 still saying that we're getting 5 energy per second. And you can see our energy pool going up there in the bottom right by 5 energy per second. Now, let's go ahead and just use an ability here to drain our pool a bit. Oh, that's another thing as well. We get that free ability, remember? He's gathered enough information, which is kind of annoying. We're going to have to wait. Let's use a few more abilities. Like so. And we'll wait for our Wellspring to run out. There we go. So if we do it again... but this time, once we've done one, we'll do another, and that will increase the radius of the Wellspring, give us a bit more ability strength, and yeah, it will increase the duration as well. So let's just do that now. And there we go. So as you can see, the radius is increased. In the top right there, we see that 20% extra ability strength. We still get 5 extra energy per second, so nothing has changed there. But for a clearance frame, that extra 20% ability strength is quite useful. So let's hop in. And yeah, we'll just kind of mash away, I suppose. Now, in ESO, we do got to be careful not to use our ability too often. Like so, and then we can just keep our energy pool up nice and high. And yeah, things die, and we don't have to worry about our energy going. So there you go, guys. This is kind of the best way to do SO, I guess, if you're looking to get to later stages. Obviously, you want to take a frame that's going to be good for the faction you're against for this kind of thing, which is why I'm using Volt against the Corpus units here, because the electric damage is pretty good against them. But, you know, all in all, not too shabby. So let's move on to the next focus tree. Okay, so the last tree that we're looking at here is Naramon. Now, Naramon is another one that I like to use quite frequently. I think in order of the trees that I like, it'll probably go Unairu first, then Madurai, and then Naramon. So Naramon is a very melee-focused skill tree, but it's also very good for gathering affinity and other stuff like that. So let's just roll through the two waybounds first on this one. So we've got increased maximum void sling distance by 30% and increased operator movement speed by 30%. Again, very standard stuff. Not important to unbound early on, but can be quite useful if you're struggling to get around missions. We've then got two abilities up here. Opening Slam. This is really good if you're playing a Korra build. If you start by performing a slam as operator, then you can get your combo counter up as Korra very quickly. Obviously, double combo gain for 20 seconds. You can pretty much get to maximum in that time as Korra. So bear that in mind. That's very useful for that. And also, any other time you want to be using melee in an endurance mission, very good. Amp Spike, transfer to operator with 8 times combo multiplier to increase amp damage by 100% for 40 seconds. This is very good for pairing with Last Gasp, if you have Last Gasp unbound, because essentially, again, you're adding another 100% damage to this ability when you go into it, so do bear that in mind. Well, only if you have the 8 times combo, which if you're on Korra, then you probably should. We've then got Affinity Spike up here, which grants an additional 45% more melee affinity. If you haven't seen my video on how to farm focus, then do go ahead and have a look at that, because that will explain how you can use this ability to great advantage in terms of farming up focus and filling out your tree a lot quicker. So if you are doing something like Sanctuary Onslaught and you're thinking about leeching, don't leech. Take a melee weapon, go ahead and just stick this ability on and run around with your melee weapon and start trying to kill things. There's nothing that kind of angers me more than people who just sit still and expect other players to do things in Sanctuary Onslaught. At least, you know, try and melee some stuff with this ability to get your own affinity up. Because if you go into a mission and everyone's just standing still, then no one's going to get any affinity anyway. You're going to get more by running around and meleeing stuff with this ability. So bear that in mind when you're doing that in future. You know, be courteous to other players in Sanctuary Onslaught and run something like this where you can effectively farm your own affinity. Power Spike, again, very important on this. It's going to make our combo counter decay by 5 every few seconds, sorry, instead of depleting completely. It's very useful for keeping your combo counter up nice and high. Really good for Korra. Again, when we're doing our farming builds, would recommend. The two abilities here, again, pair in very well with Last Gasp. As soon as you go into Last Gasp, you can go ahead and just spam one at any enemies in front of you, and any lifted enemies give you, well, basically you'll get an extra 200% operator damage when you do this. So just bear that in mind. It's very good for getting yourself back up with Last Gasp. Just spam your first ability as soon as you go in if you've got Naramon on, and you will get a lot more operator damage. And then the two here, there's only actually one here that's good. Sling Stun is kind of here nor there, really. You can see second ability increases the width of the next Void Sling by 200%, and enemies hit are vulnerable to finishes. I tend not to use finishes at all, so for me, this is not a very good one. And then we've got Killer's Rush here, which can actually be quite good. Initiating a finisher as operator switches to Warframe, increasing melee critical chance by 50% for 40 seconds. So using this towards the start of a mission, again, can be a great way to get your damage output up quite quickly. But yeah, let's go ahead, guys. We'll run into a quick mission with this, probably just a Korra farming one. and we'll demonstrate some of this in action. I'll also maybe do a quick focus farming clip as well with this, just to show the difference in affinity gain, and then we'll close out the video. Okay guys, so moving on to Naramon now, the mission for Naramon. We have got ourselves a Banshee here. This is my focus farming build. If you haven't seen my focus farming video, go and have a look at that, as it will explain a bit more about what's going on here. But this is a good mission to demonstrate Naramon and the kind of benefits it can provide you. So first of all, let's just go ahead, we'll get out our melee weapon. And throughout this mission, we will take a look in the bottom right to see our combo counter. So I'll get it up a bit high, and then we'll wait, and obviously you'll see that it will simply just drop down. Okay, so our combo counter is up a bit now. So if you watch in the bottom right, you can see the line there. Let's just do this real quick. So if we watch as it goes down, it's going to drop by 5 down to 20. So it doesn't go down all the way. So that's the first thing you need to note. Now what I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to go ahead and complete this mission. And then when we get to the end, I will demonstrate the affinity spike ability on the Naramon tree. Okay guys, so if we take a look here, now that we finished that mission, you can see that we managed to collect 119,039 Zenurik. if we hover over that, we can see a difference between the Banshee, which is where we had one of our lenses, and the Guandao, which is where we had another one. Both of those were greater lenses, and you can see that we achieved what I would guess, just from calculating, is about 45% more. So that's a good way to use Naramon. Again, for combo counter, it's great for Cora and stuff like that, but let's move on to the next focus group now. Okay guys, so hopefully that gives you a good idea of where these skill trees can be used in the game. Now obviously there are many other uses for them. I've just glossed over the ones, or what I like to use them for. So obviously let me know down in the comments what you guys use these skill trees for. If there's anything different perhaps that I might have missed that you think is a cool way of using them, then let me know. I'd be happy to have a look and give them a test out myself. But if you do have any other questions relating to this, then again, leave those down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video, and I will catch you in the next one, guys. I'll see you later.